Hello, and welcome to Chinwag. I'm Kim from Pooches Galore.
And I'm Carla at Completely Canine.
And this week we are tackling dogs who don't eat.
Yeah,
I have a client at
very.
the moment whose dog, well, actually, I've got one and a half clients. I've got one client whose dog is now eating and one
Mm.
dog who is not. So it's fresh in my mind, she says optimistically on a Monday morning.
I've never had one, I don't think, that just really as difficult as probably the one you're doing at the minute, but quite a lot that don't eat in context.
Yeah, not eating in context is a big one. I've had a
Yeah.
lot because of the behavioral work I do. A lot of dogs are on fluoxetine, and that one of the side effects of that is an inappetite. So
Mm.
sometimes we have to be creative with them to encourage eating, but it's the meds rather than anything else that.
Yeah.
But lots of dogs are less food motivated than others. I don't have that problem. I have always had very food motivated dogs, so I find it very odd when people are like, "Oh, they won't eat that," and I'm like, "My dogs will eat dust."
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm the same, to be fair. And the majority of dogs I work with, to be fair, are like labs and
Spaniels.
spaniels. So they are very food motivated. But
Yeah,
then I've got a lot of collies that are like highly toy motivated. Like toy is life.
yeah,
Moving things is life. So
yeah,
actually it trumps having
yes,
food. But again, context.
yes. We can talk about
So
all of those things
yeah.
and how it impacts our dog's perception of the food.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I just said, I have dogs who are food motivated.
hmm
So it is an odd one, but Stanley is not toy motivated in the slightest, not at all.
Okay.
Like I could take out every toy I own into a field. He is not bothered in the slightest.
Mm.
A bit of dust out of the corner of my treat pouch. We're all in.
The crumbs that get stuck under your nails are like
Oh yeah,
last ones.
nice. Yeah, definitely. There is, and see, and you do have like your collies who, or maybe your terriers who really like the toys and they like the movement, like to grab stuff and shake stuff or
Yeah.
retrieve stuff. And you have kind of maybe the Labradors who sit a little bit in the middle. They'll do anything for food, but they also love their ball as well.
Yeah. And so there's like loads of little areas of this as well, isn't there? There's like the dogs who are very food motivated. There's the dogs who are almost too food motivated, but it's
Yeah.
kind of hard. You have to with a lot of our dogs in agility, we have to lower the value of the food when we're
Yes.
working because their arousal levels go through the roof. And then you've got dogs who love food most of the time, but when they get like over aroused or really excited or they've got loads of adrenaline, food's not that motivating because what they're doing, again, in agility, sometimes the actual agility is so motivating, they're not
Yeah.
interested in the food. And you've got
Yeah.
dogs who, if you put a toy out into the environment, it then increases in value over the food.
Yes.
So that can change as well. And then dogs that are literally just like, I'll eat it out of a bowl because I have to, because it's dinner and I survive on it, but also I'm not working for
Yeah, absolutely.
it.
I also think as well, because I work predominantly with behavior cases now, and food is very different in those circumstances because stress will remove appetite. So if you think about going into like a job interview or something that's super stressful, and then I come along and I'm like, do you want some chocolate? And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, no, I couldn't think of anything worse. Like, and that is something that maybe you would choose over other food items generally. But in that situation, that fight or flight has kicked in, and your body's saying, I can't do anything with digestion right now. Everything's got to go to our limbs. We can't deal with eating. And so that can be a cause of not eating as well in dogs, that
Mm.
the environment is too stressful and so or sometimes too overwhelming in a
Yeah.
good way as well, that they can't eat because their body is in a different mode. They're not in rest and digest, they're in fight or flight, and that makes a huge difference in the way that the dog perceives the food, and it becomes quite negative.
Yeah. And that's exactly the analogy that I use with people when I'm
Yeah,
like, when you're feeling really anxious about something you don't feel like eating, and they're like, of course not. Like,
yeah,
so that's
I get that all
exactly,
the time.
yeah, it's exactly what your dog's doing. Or they'll go, oh no, I'm an overeater when I'm
Oh
like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
well, some are, but
Yeah, that is also your, I think sometimes the overeating is your body trying to put itself into rest and digest,
yeah.
rather than fight or flight, because fight or flight, it is all about removing yourself from situations. So
Mm.
so yeah, and then you see owners like shoving chicken in the dog's face, and the dog's actively looking away and avoiding it. And I'm like, whoa, we need to increase distance, we need to change the setup. Like, your dog physically cannot eat in this situation, and we're making that food really aversive right now. And yes, they love chicken, and I'm not denying that they love chicken, but right now they can't do the chicken.
Yeah, and they like, that's a really good example, because that's happened quite a few times with clients that I've met who have started their training journey maybe really early, which is good when their puppies are young, but have overexposed, and they're trying to funnel high value reinforcement into their dog's mouth while the dog is stressed, and the dog's trying to like say, I'm not interested in this, I don't want it. And it's almost like people think if the dog eventually takes the food, they've learned the thing. The dog is appeasing. The dog is like, I'll eat it, so you can stop doing this.
Make it go away.
Make the food go away. And then you can literally poison your treat. So you're poisoning the treat, and quite often you are then pairing stress with what the dog is seeing, because you're trying to force food down them.
Not literally poison.
Not literally poisoning, like mentally, psychologically poisoning.
Psychologically poisoning. It's one of those ones with food, isn't it? We're not actually putting cyanide into the food. We're just telling the dog that in this situation the food is aversive. I also think that dogs can snatch treats as well when they're really stressed. So I will often say, does your dog always snatch treats? If you're working with a Labrador, often you have to be very careful about how you give that food if you like your fingers. Exactly. And so I will often say, does your dog always snatch food? Like, if you're giving a treat in the garden, if you're giving a treat at home, if you're giving a treat in a non-stressful environment, do they snatch at the food? And they'll be like, no, not really. And I'm like, okay, so they are eating the food now, but they are not happy about it. And they're taking it and they're like dealing with it. And so that's another thing to look at as well, is just because your dog takes the food, are they happy about taking the food, or are they quite stressed and dealing with the food?
Yeah, definitely.
I also go on, sorry.
I'm just gonna say that I think, like, when it's not even necessarily just when you're hand feeding dogs as well. A lot of people, what they'll do is when they want the dog to become confident around something new, is they'll coax the dog with the food closer to the thing, or they'll throw the food on the floor closer to the thing. So the dog has added pressure to pick up the food, or added pressure to get it when they're getting closer to the thing. So it's like adding pressure rather than taking it away and giving that dog opportunity to make choices. We
see that all the time, don't we? With dogs who are scared of people. This is my thing, and I harp on about it all the time. So if you've got a dog scared of men, I'm gonna say typical situation, obviously, like a lot of dogs love men, but men are often problematic because they're tall and loud and deep voice and stuff, or past experiences, and they will hold a treat and like coax the dog to them with the treat. The dog will go, okay, I quite want the chicken, go up, snatch the chicken, and then be like, oh my god, now I'm really close to the scary thing, and then they run away. And like, that's not a positive setup for that dog. Whereas instead we could do it from a distance. They look at the person and we feed the treat. That's a much gentler way, and probably going to get you there much quicker.
Or the treat and retreat. Walk forward, lob a treat away from you, and then
walk
go
away. Absolutely.
Space. I like to think about it as almost like a bungee cord. When people are, because it's the same with agility when we're talking about space pressure. We use it a lot in agility, and we look at it as a like where the dog is compared to your shoulders and stuff like that. It works a lot, but it's also in terms of like when you're coming in towards the dog, especially a dog that's a little bit more nervous, you're sort of putting pressure, like air pressure. You can't see because you're listening on Spotify, but there's almost like this force field around you that's sort of like coming in as a really tight pressure when you're coming in towards them. And if you throw a treat away from you or behind the dog, you know, a different direction, then you're making that space, and that pressure is slowly like growing again, like releasing. So you're making that for the dog. They come in and they go, well, last time I didn't feel the pressure, so I might come in closer next time. I might manage that. And it gives the dogs the choice, and I'm a big advocate of giving dogs more choice. They can wait till the person retreats and get the treat. They can, you know, there's so many variations that they have control over that makes the food more reinforcing than if somebody's holding it. For sure.
The other thing that people do is they'll be offered a treat, maybe by a stranger, maybe by, you know, somebody else, and the dog goes, no, no, thank you. No, it's a bit dry, it's a bit mealy, I don't really want it. And then the owner will go, oh, it's fine, I've got some chicken here. And they're like reinforcing the not eating of the lower value treat.
Yeah.
By going, it's fine, they won't eat that, but they will eat this.
Yeah.
So they refuse the food that's been offered. And then they're reinforced with something higher. And so they kind of learn, if they don't want something, if it's not palatable as much as they want it to be, they can just say no, and then they'll get something better. And it's a really good way of teaching your dog to be selective about what they eat.
Yeah.
I see that quite a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, go on. I was just gonna say, I tend to take out slightly lower value treats as a trainer and behaviorist, hoping that the owner has the good stuff.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they end up working really well for me and my high value treats. And the owner's like, why won't they eat this? And I'm like, well, because I've demoed something with the high value treat. They know it's on offer now. And some dogs will learn that. Yeah.
And that's like something I suppose we've not just spoken about, is that sometimes when the dog is not food motivated, it is simply because the food that you are using in your training is not motivated, like it's not nice for them. And in those environments where your dog is really struggling, like, or the environment is really exciting, so say they're a spaniel and they're in a field and it's like the smells are everywhere, you taking your dog's dinner kibble out with you might work, but most of the time when you're around stuff like that, your treats are not interesting. So if you went out and you took something higher value, like cocktail sausages, chicken, whatever, you are more likely to get some kind of attention in the first place in that environment to be able to do some learning and training. So I think that's always the first step, isn't it? When you have a new client, you're like, they're not food motivated, what you're using, and they're like,
the kibble. Or my maybe one of my least, they don't eat human food.
Don't eat human food.
They don't eat human food. I'm like, what are they eating? Because all food could be human quality. Or
no, Kim, it's not listed. It doesn't say dog on the front of the packet.
That's like I'm so confused. Like, if it's chicken, it's chicken.
Yeah.
Like if it's apple, it's apple. If it's carrot, it's carrot. Like, I get that you don't want to feed your dog from your plate. Totally agree. I don't. It's not a behavior I prefer. Like, it's not for me. Apparently it's for my mother-in-law, but it is not for me. It is, I get that, but your dog doesn't go, oh, this chicken is human chicken. Oh, this chicken is dog chicken. It just goes, oh, tasty. I have got quite a few clients who are on like a hypoallergenic food, and so they can only eat their white kibble in all situations. We do have a few tricks along the way to make some of that a little bit more palatable by marinating it with a scent. So we'll use hot dogs or something, smoked type meat, put it in the tub with the white kibble, and it can just make that kibble take on the scent of the sausage, and that can sometimes make it a little bit more valuable, because that is a real bind when you're in that situation where they can only eat, because of a medical reason, that one food, and that one food is not the most palatable food that is on the market.
I have a client with a dog who's on an elimination diet at the minute for IBS, and the only thing he is allowed to eat is ants. So she's got a food that is specifically just purely 100% ants, and then they're having to slowly add in other things because he gets really, really poorly. So he's having tests, and he's currently like, they're trying to find stuff to keep him alive, and he luckily loves it.
Wow, crazy! I can imagine. That is a new one. I've not come across that. I've dealt with a lot of dogs on elimination diets for ant. We do always try and get them onto a really novel protein. We'll go for something really wacky, like kangaroo or something that they might not have experienced before, and that's normally my workaround. But ant I didn't even know that was
the insects as protein is quite a big thing at the minute.
It is becoming a big thing, so we'll see. But that's a good one. But I do think you can make some foods more palatable. You can also reduce the value. Stanley will work in any environment for kibble, because I make it reinforcing. Also on treat delivery, you can make food really dull by just shoving it in your dog's face, force feeding them it.
Yeah.
Catching is a great one. Chucking it, getting them to sniff it out. All of those ways of just making the treat delivery more novel can raise the value of food as well.
Yeah, and that can go
Licking.
2 ways too. So if you've got a dog who is like really good at finding treats and loves sniffing and loves catching, if you throw treats and you throw treats into like a grassy area where they get to hunt for it as well, that would be really reinforcing for them. If you've got a dog that is a bit more nervy or doesn't have good resilience and confidence levels at the minute, and you throw your treat into a dense grassy area, they're going to be a little bit more like, they're going to less likely go and work and enjoy finding that treat because it's hard. So because it's a hard task, they don't get the little like dopamine hit from it. So actually for them in an environment that's quite hard, you want a floor where it's really easy for them to find that food, but you might roll it across the floor or do something like that. So it's actually thinking about how hard it is for them to access the reinforcer as well.
Yeah. Yeah, because if it's too hard, like if you want a cake, but you have to bake it, you're less inclined. Whereas if someone turns up with cake, like that's really easy. So I think you do have to think about that. I worked with a dog called 𝙒𝙤𝙡𝙘𝙤𝙦, one of my favorite dogs I've ever worked with, Romanian rescue, came over, lived with my client who brought over kind of like 5 dogs at a time. She had a lot of land, Ellie lived in a stable, had a great life, would not eat at all, like would not take any reinforcer, didn't have a lot of joy in her life, was quite shut down, probably had quite a tough life, but was the sweetest dog known to mankind. And I was just sat with one of her owners, and we were just lovely sunny day, just sat on a grassy bank, just chatting about her. And I think, I don't know if I threw the treat on purpose or if I just kind of like it spilled out of my hand and rolled down this hill. I mean, hill was maybe a bit excessive, like grassy bank. And she chased after it like nothing I'd ever seen before. And I was like, oh, because she was so shut down, I didn't think that she would enjoy that kind of movement pattern. So sometimes you find out by accident, and then that was it. We could toss treats left, right, and centre, and she would bound after them. But they still had to be very high value. She was very selective. I was all in for that. But yeah, sometimes you think, oh, this dog won't like something, but you do just have to try it.
Yeah. And sometimes you think actually if it's more effort for them, they won't do it. And sometimes, like my retriever was hilarious because obviously I did a lot of training with him. He found it more reinforcing to eat his food through training than he did from a bowl. So he enjoyed the doing stuff with me. He enjoyed the problem solving. So I did a video once of me literally picking up his dinner bowl of food, pouring it into an empty Kleenex box and putting it down in the same place. And suddenly he was like tearing the Kleenex box apart and then eating his dinner.
So that's called contra freeloading. That's the fancy term for that. And that is because animals naturally prefer to work for their food. So you will often find working for food more reinforcing than being given just a bowl of food. And sometimes as well, the bowl can be quite negative for the dog. If it's metal and they're tagged things against it, that can be problematic. Or if the bowl's slippy, or if it's plastic and it's got a smell to it, that can be quite off-putting. So we often find that dogs will prefer to work for their food rather than just be kind of served it. I think it must be more fun as well. We don't always sit at the table with a knife and fork and eat our food, you know.
No. And
sometimes we have a picnic or a takeaway or go to a restaurant or
and it's like a natural thing for them to forage. It's a natural thing for them to hunt. It's like something where when they get that food and they seek that food, they get these like, I guess what I'd call like a little mini high, because they're like, found it, I got it, succeeded in something, and that's like good for confidence building. So, and I think it's important, like, because I used to be very, you know, every meal needs to be stimulating, and now it's kind of gone the other way where you're like, I'm meeting a lot more anxious dogs, and you definitely don't want it to be like that. Like some days they just need days where you just can access it, and it's, you know, it's not hard. But I do think that, you know, even just taking a handful of your kibble and just scattering it outside on the floor, it's something different, isn't it?
And there was a whole phase in the dog training world where nothing in life is free. Thankfully we've moved far away from that, because that was way too intense. Having to work for all of your food was not healthy. And I think that there is a balance. I like to use a bit of the dog's kibble in there for their training when it's appropriate. I like to use high value food when it's appropriate. I like to feed easy occasionally. I like to feed challenging, and I like to feed really challenging, and I like to mix it up so that it's every day's a bit different. And that might depend on me, just how much time I've got, or it might depend on what I'm doing with the dog, or there's all sorts of different ways that it affects how my dog's fed. It depends if I'm feeding or if other people in my house are feeding. So I know if John's fed a lot, he will have either scattered it outside or it'll have been in a bowl. Like those are the two things John does, which is fine. But it also means that I tend to do more interesting stuff with Stan because I'm more interested in doing it as well.
Yeah, I really like giving the homework task to kids if they're in the house.
Yeah, like
yeah, so it's like your task for the week, you have to pick one thing out of the recycling bin, and you're going to put the dog's dinner in that and give it to them. And it's like a little scavenger hunt that is not hard, doesn't put any extra time for the parents in. So
yeah, totally. Recycling bins are the best for feeding dogs.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I also do bear in mind what if you don't do a lot of enrichment-based feeding methods, what is your dog eating out of, and do they like it? Because I do have a few dogs who are genuinely scared of their bowl.
Yeah.
Really don't like the bowl.
Because of the noise.
The noise and the smell.
Or the reflections as well.
Yeah. You might never have come across it before. You might think we're talking crazy, but honestly, it's such a thing, especially if your dog wears a big tag, like dangles and hits the bowl. It can be quite disconcerting for them. So,
or if your dog has like arthritis or sort of pain in their shoulder and they're having to lean down, if you get a raised bowl, sometimes that can help as well.
Or if they've got 3 legs, we got a raised bowl for Mills when she had 3 legs.
Yay. So. Or sometimes if we had this with my cat, he was like not eating well, it's because actually he just needed a dental.
Teeth can be, pain can be, and like you said about IBS, and it doesn't necessarily come across that they won't eat a lot of the time. It comes across with other issues. Resource guarding can be a digestive issue.
I found developing, I don't know if you found the same thing, developing resource guarding with young dogs, so puppies, older puppies, young adolescents, around slow bowls. When they're frustrated eaters and people put slow bowls down with all the hard lumps in and they're bashing their gums and they're still obviously teething, the back end of teething, and you're just creating more frustration and pain around food, and it has ended up a fair few times with resource guarding, and I'm like, what are you feeding from? And they're like, slow bowls. I'm like, ditch. Get rid, please.
It can be. I think everyone has the best well, I always say this about behavioral problems, like everyone has the best intentions. No one goes in, they're thinking, I've got a young Labrador puppy who is gulping their food down, that's going to cause some issues. Here is a solution to that gulping of food. They're not necessarily thinking, and then hopefully they'll develop resource guarding by using this bowl. It's very much they're trying to solve a problem that they can see, and they're not aware of any potential kind
consequences.
Consequences. And there are other ways that you can slow them down. Just throwing the food on the floor so they're finding it also invokes their seeking like brain pathway, which is really good for them as well. We love that. Or cardboard cardboard boxes, what they called egg boxes. They're really good for puppies as well, because you can just put a little bit of food in and they can only eat one compartment at a time. They don't even have to do anything difficult with it. It's just
or the old muffin tin.
I do like the muffin tin, but because it can be quite loud for some dogs, it can be a little bit it makes a lot of noise.
Maybe a silicone muffin tin.
A silicone muffin tin. We're moving with the times.
So I've just thought of another thing as well. Obviously, in the agility world, that's a lot of the stuff I do. I do find clients coming in when they've done online puppy programs for agility.
Okay.
And a lot of schools are still a bit stuck in you hand feed your dog everything, so they depend on you, so that they're super attached to you. And then you end up with a dog that won't eat anything out of anything because they only eat near you. And then if you put too much pressure on, some of them will stop eating completely because if they're hurting, or if they're you know, injured, whatever, or they have a bad stomach and they just want to like relax, and you're asking them to move and do all these things for their food, and they just shut down. They're like, no, that's the only way I can access my food, and I'm in pain.
I honestly couldn't think of anything worse
than your dog being that dependent on you.
Well, yeah, or just the effort of hand feeding everything.
Yeah.
I do hand feeding exercises for like learning for the puppy learning their name. So you can literally teach your dog their name with one bowl of food. And so I'm, you know, you have the odd thing in. I'm not going to say I never do it. But imagine every meal time having to be like, here's some food, here's some food. I just couldn't be bothered.
No.
Just, you know, that's why I like scatter feeding so much. Here's a cup of food, now it's on the floor, find your food.
Help yourself.
Yeah. No, I think having that independence. I also have had dogs who don't like to eat in the presence of their human either, which but for a variety of reasons, and they can be kind of completely unrelated. It can be the tag on the bowl happened in the presence of their owner and they put the two things together, and so they'll only eat when the owner's not around, and that can be problematic as well.
Obviously. It can be that the people are near and walking by in doorways and the bowl's near a doorway.
Yeah. Or it could be very low level resource guarding. So you're not necessarily seeing like the kind of stiffening, growling, teeth baring whale eye. They're just uncomfortable about people being around their food bowl. So you're not seeing it if you're not looking for it. But
so you can also get the eating excessively fast, like the snappiness with the treat. Gulping food is like a massive resource guarding sign.
How fast can I ingest this so you can't have
so that no one can take it away from me.
And the other thing, and I think this is maybe one we should have maybe touched on earlier because it's quite an easy one to do, is that the dogs are filled up on other foods throughout the day. So they're given treats on their walk, they come home and they have a chew, they have a lunchtime chew when you have your food, they have a 3 o'clock chew, they have some food on their dog walk, and then their kibble's put down in the evening. And they don't eat, weirdly, they don't eat their kibble. And like this dog has eaten so much throughout the day that the kibble is not palatable enough, but also they know that there's a million other things that they've eaten that day and they're just not that fussed by it.
Or they're tired. We have a few dogs who go home from agility and they just don't want to eat because they're just
that, and the fact that they're not starving hungry because they maybe had handful of rewards agility. They're like, it's fine, I'm full enough and I'm tired, I'm just going to sleep. I think people get into this trap of, my dog isn't food motivated but they will eat these things, so I will feed them these things and then hope that they eat their food, and it becomes this vicious cycle. Instead of finding a food that's maybe a little bit more palatable and sticking with it a little bit more and reducing stuff throughout the day, so the kibble therefore becomes more reinforcing. I think if you're hungry, you eat your vegetables, don't you? If you're not that hungry, you pick around them. It's that, isn't it? Like you eat the good stuff and leave the rest of it. Whereas if you're hungry, you'll eat whatever you're kind of given.
I do think, like, I'm a fan as well of changing foods. Because your dog is good for your dog's microbiome anyway, to be able to do that.
Totally.
So if your dog, you know, has a pretty good stomach, change the food. Otherwise, it's like having lasagna every day. Like, you just wouldn't want the same thing every single day.
No, I do think that. And for some dogs, you will have to transition their food fairly slowly. But if you regularly change your dog's food, I don't transition Stan. If we run out of his food and we have a like kind of specialist food that he has, and we get it online and we've forgotten to order it, I can just go and get any dog food and he will eat it. But because I introduce lots of variety into his diet all of the time, I think the problem does come if they're just fed one kibble that they came from the breeder on, they've stuck on that, not really adding any human food into their diet. And then that food is discontinued. And then the dog's body can't process stuff that it hasn't eaten. I think it's a bit like you and I. So you and I are both vegan and we're both quite open about that. And if I eat dairy by mistake, I know about it. Like if I can't think of an example recently, but there has been times because milk powder gets sneaked into everything.
I
and
have
recipes change.
I have a sensitive stomach anyway because I was a really fussy child. So
so you'll have just eaten a small diet.
I wouldn't have eaten as many different things. So now I don't think it's because of that. I think there's probably other things going on, but
Yeah.
I struggle to eat rich foods. So if I eat anything that's like, I couldn't even give you an example, like something that is something I don't eat a lot, maybe because I can't afford it. It's probably like a really rich food, like high in protein, high in whatever. I know that it will make me bad. Or if I eat spices, because I don't eat them very often now, if I eat spices, they make me really bad. So I'm very sensitive to these sorts of things, and I really should be having things like probiotics, which I do buy and then don't take. But we can get them for dogs as well. So
get them for dogs. Yeah. But I think having a very diverse gut microbiome. So I'm the other way. I have a excessively varied diet, high in spice, and probably maybe higher in richer foods, but it is quite super healthy. And I don't struggle introduce we did a run the other week, didn't we? And I was like, oh, let's go to Grounded Kitchen because I don't have one in Harrogate, and you do, and you were like, I can't eat that before a run. I was like, all right, okay. Whereas that wouldn't cross my mind because it doesn't affect me. I can eat a curry and then go and do a half marathon. Like, it doesn't bother me.
Poor Kim has to have a plain pasta with me the night before.
Yum. Delicious. But yeah, so I do think the more you can vary a diet, your dog gets used to eating a variety of different things, which is good for their gut biome, which is, we know, then helps their behavior. I think it also means that they're a little bit more adaptable, and maybe they're a little bit more food motivated, because novelty is a motivating factor.
Yes. Yeah,
so
massively.
If you only feed kibble at home and only feed boiled chicken on a walk, that will lose its power.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah. I quite liked so when I went to Simone Muller's seminar that we went to, the predation substitution training, she's like, just take out whatever you had for dinner the night before that your dog can have when you go out and do your training, because every day is a novelty day then, and your dog will always be second guessing. And I was like, I like that.
Yeah, totally. It doesn't have to be weird and wonderful and wacky. It just needs to be different variety.
Yeah.
Stanley will eat nearly all vegetables that are dog safe, because we have a very veg heavy diet, and so he often gets offcuts of bits well, now we have a tortoise, he's gone down the pecking order for that a little bit. Belinda gets the stuff, and then Stanley gets the stuff Belinda can't have or won't eat, but he doesn't know. Yesterday he did steal one of her green beans, which is Belinda's favorite food in the world. And he carried it in really gently, and I said, drop. And he dropped it and looked really sad. And then I said, no, you can't have it, you have to leave it. And then he looked at me, and I picked it up and gave it back to the tortoise. And then I got him a raspberry out of the fridge, so he was happy.
Okay.
He has a bit of a sweet tooth.
Bless him.
He carried it in so gently, and I said, drop it. And he went, oh.
He's like, I think I know that I'm not allowed this, but I'm just going to see if I get away with it.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, you can have, there are so many vegetables that are dog friendly that you can, some of them will need cooking, some of them they can eat raw, but that variety will massively help. It doesn't have to be meat all of the time.
Yeah. And then just touching back on the predation substitution stuff, one of the really cool things with that is, you know, if your dog is in an environment where they're overstimulated and they're not really keen to eat, you can teach eating as a behavior in those environments. So her big thing is squeezed cheese, primula, you know, pâtés and stuff. If you can teach your dog to lick, which is easier, so licking is more accessible for dogs when they're in overstimulation. If they can for free sit and you can squeeze that squeezy cheese, if they can continuously start to lick it when they're in the presence of the thing that is quite stimulating for them, by choice, they learn eating as a behavior in high arousal environments. So you can start with that before you go on to things like eating, and then you build up the being able to eat in those environments too. Yeah,
totally. You can also have eating as a kind of gateway behavior for a more probable behavior as well. So you can teach the dog that if they eat, they'll have access to something else. So it's a same thing, just a different way of dealing with it. That can be using the pre-MAC principle. That can be quite a strong way of teaching that eating behavior. The behavior of eating. we can always teach. But some dogs are going to struggle, and you do have to start easy and make it more difficult with all of what we've just said, really.
Yeah.
But I do think novelty is a big one.
Yeah.
Because a lot of dogs I work with, so I use a lot of JR Pate predominantly because when Millie was really poorly, it was one thing she would eat, so I have a lot of it. So we're still working our way. Luckily, it has a long shelf life. We're still working our way through it, and I'll generally chop it up. I like it because it is firm. It doesn't crumble. It's not messy. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, they don't eat treats outside," and I'll be like, "Oh, let's try this," and I'll be like, "Oh, what is it?" And I'll be like, "Oh, it's chicken or whatever," and then they'll go and buy 12 packets of the JR Pet Pate and chicken, and they'll be like, "Oh, they did eat it and now they don't." I'm like, buy the variety pack, switch it up,
don't overkill.
Yeah,
it's like me when I first realized that strawberry jammy dodgers were vegan.
Did you eat too many?
And then I ate loads, and then Oreos, and then I OVD'd them, and then I don't want to come near an Oreo ever again. Like, I genuinely I feel sick looking at them because I just use them as my reinforcer all the time, and now I'm like, I'm just sick of them. I don't want it anymore.
Yeah. I've not done that. I do like an Oreo.
Oh,
not as much as I love a Biscoff though.
Oh, I do love Biscoff, but again, I did it with that. I've done it with everything because I've got no limit. I can just smash a packet of biscuits in one sitting.
Yeah.
Then feel sick about it.
See, I don't have a sweet tooth, but occasionally I'll be like, yeah, rice cakes with Biscoffy spread on us because I think that is healthy.
Yeah, sure. What, the rice cake bit? Yeah. It's all about balance.
I'm not putting it on next biscuit, am I?
I love how we were talking about reinforcers and then we finished by talking about Biscoff.
Always. I can always bring a conversation around to Biscoff.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we've given people some ideas of maybe where they're not going wrong, but things that they could change and make life a little bit easier, and things that they can try out with their dog to see if it helps them with their dog who's maybe not as food motivated as our Labradors are.
Yeah, for sure.
If you've got any specific questions, pop them underneath the reel and we can maybe give some hints and tips on there as well.
Yeah, if there's any specific contexts or environments where it's a problem, we can help.
We love helping. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Brilliant. See you next week.